Hey girl, Marissa here. You are listening to the Codependent Dummy podcast. As a young woman, you have been raised, reinforced, and rewarded for putting the needs of others above your own. Now, in your 20s, you're finding yourself exhausted, exasperated, and enveloped in shit relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. Codependency is a way of being where we put the feelings, wants, and needs of others above our own in an unconscious attempt to meet our own feelings, wants, and needs. Sorry to break it to you, sis, but that is not sustainable. This podcast is to help you undo all that so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Let's get to it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Codependent Dummy podcast. Today, I am speaking with, you are hearing from Nara Lee. She is a psychotherapist in Los Angeles, California, who specializes in treating anxiety, depression, trauma, grief, and relational issues. Nara received her master's in clinical psychology with a specialization in spiritual and depth psychology from Antioch University. Welcome, Nara.
Hi, so nice to be here.
Yes, nice
Thanks
to
so
see
much
you.
for having me here. Yes,
Yeah.
it's good to see you.
All right, so first question, how do you define the term codependency?
Yeah, well, the way I define it is I try to get my needs met, my needs for love, connection, safety, belonging, right? All of these human needs. And the way I try to get them met is by first meeting your needs, right? Via helping, caretaking, rescuing, fixing, etc. Yeah. And, in a way that doesn't work for me, in a way that burns me out, right? Makes me resentful, gets me anxious, unsure about my place with you, all of that stuff. Yeah. So, yeah.
I try to get my needs met by first meeting your needs. Yeah.
Which is, a bit of a doozy, right? Let me meet my needs. But then there's this extra layer, of, right? If I'm, thirsty, right, and I need a drink of water, I can, right, either go up and get a glass of water, or, in the case, of some folks, I can make it a little bit more complicated, right, by involving someone else or, something like this, which, happens sometimes, unfortunately. So, yeah.
And
that would be my
Nara,
definition.
do you have any experiences of codependency from your own life to share?
Sure. I mean, so many of us do, right? Yeah, well, well, all the times that I said yes, when I wanted to say no, didn't know I could say no, right? A lot of us don't even know sometimes that that's an option, because we weren't taught. Maybe, you can say no and it's still okay. We're still going to be in relationship with one another. I'm still going to like you, still respect you. I'm not going to punish you, etc. So yeah, all those times, that I just had no clue, yeah, Marissa, that has happened. over a lifetime.
Any specific memory that comes to mind?
Yeah. Oh, let's see. Well, one memory that comes to mind is oh, I know. So I'm Asian American, and the eldest daughter in my family. Both of my parents were born and raised in South Korea, so they didn't grow up here. So it's a big cultural gap. And one of the cultural expectations in my family growing up was you just say yes all the time to your elders, to your parents, right? And so, here I am living my life trying to fulfill this expectation, to the best of my ability. And one of those things, right, is you never say no to your mom. Right? And so, for example, maybe I just had a really long day at work, and but my mom with her own needs and worries and anxieties and all those things that do come with being an immigrant in this country, plus her temperament, and she calls me, right? I'm exhausted, but I still pick up the phone, right? Yeah. And we, she asks me to do something, right? Nara, get me this plane ticket, whatever it can be, right? Something that she needs help with. And even though I know, right, that maybe I should not answer that phone, unless it's an emergency, or maybe after I hear the request, I should say, okay, Mom, I'll do that, 2 days after, or, over the weekend or tomorrow, not right away.
Right.
But yeah, I grew up in this way where, it had to be done very quickly. There was always a sense of urgency. Yeah, which was such a pressure, for a young kid, and and even of course as adults too, right? It can be, really pressured.
Right.
You can still feel really, intense. And so, right, of course, in my own journey, learning how to say no, to family members, which is, sometimes it can be one of the hardest things, right, to do. Yeah. And not feel the guilt, not feel like I'm being disloyal, not feel like I'm being a bad daughter or person, all those things.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, with this cultural norm, ideal, expectation, saying yes to elders, did that unconsciously permeate to all your relationships?
I would say, I think in a way it did, right? Because, it's, it's not just elders, right? But also, another piece of it for me was just being in a female body, in an Asian American body, and, societally, all the things that come with that, right? All the stories, right? Oh, you're going to be, this, and this, because you look like this, and this is what we expect of you, historically, as well as culturally, right? So yes, I mean, I would say that, my life was sort of imbued with this sense of, okay, you say yes, you accommodate, you make a lot of space for others, Also, right, not only with the elder piece, but also, in the sense of if you're female, there's also this expectation in some corners of our culture, right, of being nurturant. That means you have to be incredibly gentle, and I'm using air quotes, but, or nurturing, and all these, just like a host of, right, of roles and identities
Right.
that come with that. And so, right, there's that too. It's so complex, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was really, gosh, just such a, thing to navigate, because, right, there's also this part of you, that I think we all have that, really wants to be me and enjoy being me, to enjoy being female, to be to enjoy being, in this body, in this time, and so, yeah, so much of the work, right, is just going through all those layers,
Right.
and letting it go, because a lot of it really isn't relevant also either today, right? A lot of this stuff is from a long time ago,
Right.
that we've inherited. So, yeah, it's like, okay, let's shed some of these layers,
Right.
right? So I can be me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
can be me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the heart of the matter, right? That's like the real. Yeah.
And shifting to one of your specialties, anxiety. I'm very excited to talk about anxiety and the interconnection with codependency. But before we talk about how they relate, you already gave us one definition for codependency. Nara, how do you define anxiety?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's see. Anxiety, right? Because everyone experiences it so differently in their body, So for me, right, anxiety is, that feeling in the pit of my stomach. It's the dread before I answer the phone, or before I go to an event, a family event or a social event. Right? It's the headaches, that I get, right? It's my body talking to me. Because, well, for a long time, I'm not listening, right? And so that voice gets louder and louder until, we have all these symptoms and all these signs, all these pains and aches and, um, until finally I have to pay attention and listen finally, right? And yeah, so that's how I define anxiety. Yeah.
As the dread that you sense, right? The pit of your stomach, headaches, aches, and pains. So it's the dread and the dread's attempts to communicate with you that there's dread. Your inability to sense it until it takes what it takes, and then aches, pains, not listening until you have a panic attack or anxiety attack or
Exactly. Yeah, right. Well, and because too, so many of us were trained, to only live from up here, up in here in the head, in our intellect, and which is obviously a beautiful part of us, but if we're cut off at the neck and we're also not, we're completely just detached from our bodies, um, the whole rest of, just who I am, right? It's this incomplete, picture. And so, right, so many of us, I find, we're very good at ignoring. We're very good at shushing, that voice inside. Oh no, it's fine. I can handle it. I'm going to push through because I can. I'm capable, right? I'm a grown up. That's another thing. Maybe kids can cry, but I'm all grown up. I don't need to cry. Why am I crying? There's nothing to cry about, right? Like it can kind of sound like, this thing. So, there's that, that we also have to, sort of go against the current, right? Because, so many of us are just taught, oh, this is how it is. You just push through.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love your definition as anxiety in the body, because I do think typically myself, my patients, I assume the listeners, anxiety is usually depicted as overthinking, racing thoughts. Yeah, it is described usually from the neck up, and yet it is arguably, 50-50, maybe even 75% body, 25% head. Like it is a somatic experience.
Yeah.
It really shows up, your heart pounding. Yeah, your body tense, pit in your stomach. I know, like my poor back, all these years, it's just, my anxiety's moved around, or my codependency, or both, but it's just moved around different areas of my back.
So yours is in your back. That's where you hold it, right?
It's everywhere, but yeah, mostly my back.
Yeah, right. That's headquarters. Right, because I think sometimes too, yeah, it shifts and moves, but there is a place specifically in the body that we often hold centrally.
Yes.
Where it lives. And, yeah, right. And yeah, I love what you said about your back too, right? Because it is such a somatic experience, that is so easy for us to ignore, but it can also even look like overcommitting myself, right? So I plan to be in 3-4 different places at once, which of course in this body, we, that's not actually possible,
right?
But, something in us says, oh, I can do it. I must do it. There's, or I want to do it maybe even, right? Because I'm, bored, lonely, want to be seen as smart, want to be seen as good or kind or nice, all these things, a good friend, all the whole host of things. Yeah, right. So you're right. It just shows up, in so many different ways, but in all the different parts of us, right? And also the thoughts, of course, right? The thoughts and, the whole train, the train of thoughts that come in, what if I don't do this, right? Or what if I, say my opinion, which might be different, right? Will they get mad, right? Will they shut me out, right? All those things come up too, right? Yeah. So there's just a whole variety of ways,
right?
That anxiety can take over, and oof, it's just wow, right? And obviously, and when I say that, it's not like oof, and then there's no hope, but it's just like it's more oof. That speaks to how hard, perhaps, whether it was a traumatic event or whether it was your upbringing and just your childhood and your environment, right, that you were raised in, right, and just took in all these things, or both, it speaks to, gosh, something happened, something happened to my nervous system, to my body and my mind, and my heart and my spirit, to form it in this way, for me to expect these things from life, from others, and also from myself too, often, right? Yeah, I sometimes say, sometimes my worst, most, the person I expect the most from sometimes is, it's me, that I set the standard for myself, actually, which actually is just so high, the bar, sometimes even from what others expect from me or want, or, hope from me. So sometimes it can even just be me, which is, which is so interesting, Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to read you some symptoms of codependency. And okay, first I'm going to read the symptoms. So we have 4 symptoms.
Okay.
Feeling nervous when alone. That's first symptom. Second symptom, chronic fear of abandonment, rejection, relationships ending. Third, difficulty making decisions on one's own. And fourth, worry and avoidance of conflict. Okay, so nervous, fear, worry, anxiety, right? Making decisions. Hearing that and reflecting on what we've talked about thus far. How do codependency, you can pick either one first, overlap or differ?
Yeah, well, I know most of your listeners, are navigating codependency, so maybe we'll go in that direction, right? So, when there is all this anxiety about relationships, right, or about social interactions, and also about me as a social being, right, as a person, in the world, in a body, in civilization, in society, right? None of us are, living on an island, right? So as part of, sort of this whole fabric of society, when there is all this worry, fear, avoidance, right? It's sometimes, there can be this real commingling, right, of anxiety and codependency. It's actually pretty common, and so, it's really interesting, and I'm trying to think of this. Okay, you know what? I was trying to think of this this wonderful book that it'll come back to me. But yeah, I think too, that's one of the reasons why, right, it's so helpful to come back to the body, to come back to yourself, really, right, to your whole self, because, we're talking about, and this doesn't mean like an abandonment of, of logic or reason, no, it's actually, it's about, hey, let's be friends, can my body and my brain, is there a way for us to, right, start to be on the same team, because gosh, and speaking of, the social self, right? A lot of, sometimes there's this thing in codependency where it can be so isolating, so lonely. Really, even if, you have a lot of friends and you have a lot of social events on your calendar, just this sense of, not being seen, sometimes that can be the loneliest kind of loneliness, where you're talking with someone or a group of people, and yet, right, it's because you're there physically, but you're not being met, internally,
Right.
Mentally, emotionally, yeah, and so when that happens, there's this disconnect, this jarring sense of, something's a little bit off, right? And sometimes you can't quite put a finger on it, but it's happening, right? And that's how we know, when, oh, that's why I don't want to go to this event. That's why I don't want to, stay in touch with, friends or whatever it can be, right? I start to get really cynical. Sometimes that can creep in, I think, right? Because of this, this really exquisite sort of pain that comes with, not being accurately seen or known, which is, it's also part of our humanity, right? It's one of our needs, it's just to be known. And I mean, it's also wonderful to be known and to know others,
Right.
Yeah, right. So it makes sense, that it would be so, yeah, in a way, even if it's, maybe it's not like very, blatant, right? Because you could be at this party and just completely calm on the outside, but inside, there's this whole, internal, process, going on. It could be a storm even,
Right.
It feel like a storm, but it's also because that's just part of our nature, right? Yeah. So yeah, subtle, not so subtle, but either way, equally painful, yeah, is what I would say. Yeah, yeah. Mhm. Right, and I just say that too because I think, and maybe it's just because of a lot of the people that I speak with, or my folks, but sometimes the pain can be expressed outwardly, in a very visible, way. And then also, there are some of us who, the pain is equally, great, but it's just not as visible for some of us,
Right.
It's and I think it's also, really important to, just to know, right, that you don't necessarily have to be, you know, super, out, yelling and, all these kinds of things sometimes. But sometimes, even if you're the kind of person who feels her pain in a more internal way, um, and in a more private way too, perhaps for some of us, um, that doesn't mean that it's, not as great,
Right.
and not as important, right? So yeah, there's also that piece, right, that I think is really important to note too. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
So I love this, right? Anxiety and codependency can overlap if indeed your anxiety is connected with your relationships, right? Your social interactions, your social self. Because some people are anxious, but they're anxious about their physical safety, right? And they want to stay home. Or they're anxious about snakes and it's a phobia. And yet for codependents, you could say we're, rejection, abandonment phobic. And we're more focused on our relationships falling apart as opposed to our bodies or other ways that anxiety does manifest.
Exactly. Right. It can be about a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And relationships is one of them. Yeah. Just being so, really, yeah. Because it's, and, well, because at the end of all that fear and worry, with relationships, well, because there's real pain there and real, it's just sometimes, all this fear and worry around our relationships, whether it's with, my parents, my children, my partner, underneath all of that, the things that I do too, right? The ways that I give parts of me away in exchange for, the relationship, right? Or how I, think of as the relationship, the ways that, right, to sort of have that relationship, right? And not make waves and, all those things that we do. One of the things that I really love about this work, right, is that, whether this is something that you've been struggling with since childhood, or whether it's something newer, the really great thing, right? One of the things that I see the most is that part of, if this is something you struggle with, and if this is something that you overcome, right? Because you decide, right, just to answer that call, and say, okay, I'm going to try something different because, well, this isn't working. I've tried so hard. You've probably, tried all the things, right? And said all the things and hoped for all the things. But, if when you're at that stage, when you're ready for something different, even if it's completely new and strange and foreign and you don't even know maybe if it'll work, but if you actually just take that one step, toward healing, toward learning some new other ways of loving and being close, with other people, and also with myself, right? There's this really beautiful thing that happens, in the midst of that, right? Because, sometimes the way I talk about this with my folks is, it's a big adventure. It's, sometimes we think, oh, if, I've been doing this for so long, ostensibly my whole life, how can I ever change? I'm too old, or, I'm too whatever. It's part of my nature now. All these, things, right, that, we think and feel. But actually, the pain, the, right, the resentment, right, all the anger, the righteous anger, all these things, if we actually listen, and say, oh, look, here's a messenger. What are they saying to me? Why am I so angry at everyone, right? Or I just want to shut everyone out of my life, right? All these things. What's that really about? Because, part of me may think, oh, maybe it means, oh, love is not for me. maybe I just wasn't, meant to be loved, right? Or to be able to love others in a way that feels good and satisfying and, two-way, street and right, real, not empty and hollow and transactional, right? In the way it can feel often in codependency, right? But if I answer that call, along the way, what happens is, you become this completely different person. That other people growing up told you never were or could be. It's only for, a certain kind of person, but not you, right? Or whatever, those stories or messages were. Right, actually, it turns out you can, enjoy love, right? You can actually take pleasure in being with people, right? And it can be safe, I think that's one of the best things of this work, hard as it can be. But also it's beautiful, Yeah, So that's really one of the, I think one of the, the blessings maybe, right? Because everyone can do it. That's the thing too, right? Is we all have, no matter what kind of, start we had in life, no matter what kind of culture we were born into, right? That's the thing. You have it in you, right? We all do. Yeah, and so it's really then more about you just, creating the conditions for yourself, which also is something you can do, right? You can, ask for help, right? You can, engage in your own therapy, your own discovery process, right? You can invest in yourself.
Right.
Yeah, which is the best thing you can do. Yeah, while you're here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Blessings. Who knew? Who knew our poor boundaries and, yes tendencies and indirect efforts to meet our own needs. Who knew it could be a blessing? And yet it is an opportunity. Once the consciousness is there, once the awareness is there, if your body is screaming loud enough for you to hear it, the potential blessing, the opportunity is, and I know it's been my experience, is change is possible. Yeah, you don't have to keep living like this. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, right. I love what you just said, because change is so possible. Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be overnight.
No.
If I could, I would, but But I have to say, because I've also been on my own journey too, with anxiety and also with codependency, both. And, I remember being so miserable as a child, just really, that was sort of the tenor, I think, of my early years. I remember that.
What's tenor mean in that context?
Oh, it's a musical term. It was sort of the feeling, the ambiance, like of, that was like the song of my childhood, just not really knowing how I would get out of all of these relationships that, asked me to be a very particular way, and only one part of me, a tiny sliver of me. It's almost like if you're, at a piano, but you're only allowed to play, one octave, and the rest of the keys are denied to you, this feeling of, you wonder, right, about, how much more, could I do? How much more could I live and experience if I actually had access to the whole piano, versus just this one, this one portion that, whoever, whether it's your family or society, is telling you you can only play here, which is such a shame. And so yeah, but now it's really funny actually, because I'm more in love with life than ever. And I never expected that. Is the part, right?
Wow.
I never thought, because I grew up this way, and so I had a lot of resentment and sort of like a world weariness, this is all it has to offer, and I have to accept it and be, sort of make do with the best of what I've been given, kind of this, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think if you commit, you really commit to yourself, and say, okay, well, I love me, right? No matter what anyone tells me, or whatever, they try to do, right? Because often, people sometimes too will try to use like fear tactics, right? Guilt, shame, all these things, right? Threatening the relationship, threatening, withholding love, all these things, approval, which, happens. But if we can, in the midst of that, just say, okay, got it. I see it. And I'm still doing this anyway. Yeah, then you become your own hero. And you're still loving. You're actually more loving. But also that now there's more joy, right? Because now I don't have to worry so much. Yeah, and yeah, and part of that too, right, with codependency is, right, when there's so much worry or fear, right, you can't relax into love and actual connection and play, and you can't be curious about each other or myself or, my partner, whoever, the other, right? There's no room for, discovery, right? There's no room for adventure, right? And so, yeah, this is the work. This is the work that, if you do it, all you need is a little courage, and it'll get you going, It's because also, right, we were also born to play, human beings, right? That's how we learn, is by doing all these things that we've never done before, and trying and failing and being messy, and then learning, so play is actually something that we all know how to do, and that's all you have to do. It's actually quite simple. Yeah, which I love. Yeah, it's one of the things I love most about being human.
Yeah. I feel like, though, like in the depths of my codependency, I was like, play. This is nonsense.
What?
Like I've shared it before, but my therapist a couple of years ago, she was like, Marissa, what would it be like to go with the flow? And Nara, I started crying, and I was like, I don't want to go with the flow. It was so threatening. I was like, no. yeah, I'm in a grown-up body, even though I felt like a child, but I have all these responsibilities and I have all these expectations to meet and I have all these people relying on me and no time to play.
Mhm. Yeah. And then there's that thing of, all work and no play, right? That classic adage of, it creates stagnation. Yeah, right. But also, yeah, of course, it makes sense, right? Because I'm imagining that you were taught to never play, always work, right?
And we'll like reinforce for it was so funny. I think I've mentioned this too on the podcast before, but I used to babysit along with my twin sisters. We were like the best babysitters ever for like groups of girls. And so sometimes there was a network of families, all their daughters were friends. And so we'd come over and parents would go out. And one of the moms, she texted me after listening to the podcast and she said, "You were always the responsible one, cleaning up, doing the dishes, making sure we're on schedule, while my twin sister was out playing in the yard, running around." And she's like, "Oh, like you're, yeah, like if this is embedded. This has been," and so being reinforced for that too. Yes, I sense like there was some seriousness. Oh my gosh, so many images are coming to mind. So yes, definitely reinforce for being responsible and not playing around as much, and then being rewarded over time. Yeah, turned into a overly responsible, no play allowed
Ta-da!
codependent.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, That's the experience of so many people, unfortunately, you
Mhm.
know? Um, where it's almost like a little adult,
Yeah.
you
I'm
know?
like trying to loosen up just thinking about it. All right.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Well, I am curious. I do have one more question, given all the wisdom you've shared. And on this topic, anxiety, codependency, showing up in your body. I sense play helps us connect with our bodies. So your thoughts on how we can take initial steps to incorporate play.
How do I start to play? Or even let myself, even contemplate the idea of, maybe playing somewhere down the future.
Yeah, because someone might be crying at the thought of it.
Right. Well, and actually that's pretty common to have this.
Mhm.
And it's really just because it's just so strange and new to the system, so it's going to be a bit of a shock at first. It's like the first day of kindergarten, right? It's just such a new world, that we're all going to have our reactions to it. Yeah. And so, oh, what a wonderful question of how do I begin to play? Yeah. So I would say the way we do that, if we grew up in a way where we had to grow up very quickly, and so, there wasn't a lot of space given for mystery, for the unknown, for open-ended, endedness, right? Instead, everything had to be known, had to be guaranteed, no risk or very little risk,
Mhm.
right? So then, if that was your experience, what you could do is little steps, turtle steps, right? Because you don't want to overwhelm your system, you know? And so slower is faster, okay? And what you could do is one little thing, like you could maybe even think back to yourself as a child, oh, when I was 4, 5, 6, what did I love to do? Have I heard any stories from, family members, or, did they say, oh, you loved flowers. You loved, to go and pick flowers and do things with them and, play make-believe, right? Or, do they say, oh, you loved books. You were always reaching for books and trying to read when you should have been doing your homework. Are there any stories, right, that you have heard? That might be a clue, right? And then you can, go maybe to a bookshop and just browse, right? Just doing little things, out of the ordinary. And start with, maybe 5 minutes a day of just, okay, I'm going to, so for example, if, it might be, oh, I'm interested in, I don't know, pottery, maybe, right? I've never done it before. It's completely new. It feels useless. It feels like a luxury. And if it feels that way, it's a good sign, right? If it feels not productive, you're probably heading in the right direction, right? Because the point is to give yourself this very luxurious experience, 5 minutes of luxury, right? Where it's not a list checking off, This is just for you, right? And and even if you end up hating it, which sometimes happens, right? And I've had this happen too. But now, right, that you hate it, right? And that you can hate something or, not really like something, which, for some of us, that in and of itself can be a beautiful experience to say no, when we've, for some of us, had to, like everything or, receive everything. And, couldn't say no, right? There is that again.
Right.
Couldn't say no. But if you don't have a no, you don't have a yes, right? You don't have a preference. You don't have, right? And so and when you do this, over and over time, right? Then you start to create, a you, a real you, right? That isn't, dependent on requirements, approval has to be like this. It will be this wild, completely unexpected version of you that, you didn't think was possible. But, has been waiting for you this whole time, just waiting. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's where I would start.
I love it.
Yeah.
Think back, ask for stories, try and get some clues. Little turtle steps, 5 minutes a day, and experiment.
Yes. Embrace the mystery.
Yeah, embrace the mystery. Love it, love it, love it.
Go for it.
All right. Well, Nara, thank you so much. This has been so enriching, and I'm going to try and take the homework assignment as well, or take your prescription for play as homework. Hope everybody else does too. Not like this. I hope everybody else does. if you feel like it, if it aligns and resonates with your heart. If people are wanting to connect or read more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, which is naraleetherapy.com, and you can learn a little bit more about me there.
Okay, we will put that in the show notes. And thank you so much.
Marissa, this was fun. Thank you for having me, and yeah, this was great.
Okay, bye everybody.
Thank you.
Hey girl, it's Marissa again. I'm not like a regular podcaster, I'm a cool podcaster, right? Thank you for listening and staying till the end. You can find me on Instagram at Therapy with Marissa. Email me, marissa@codependummy.com. Check out codependummy.com for more information on the show. And baby girl, a subscribe, rating, and review would be much appreciated. Till next time, I want you to remember, if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you think that you don't matter, know that you matter to me. I want you to go out there so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. And now, the disclaimer. Girl, this is not therapy, and I am not your therapist. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, publisher, or guests are rendering any legal, clinical, or other professional service. If you want or need a professional, please find one.